Thank you for joining me for my capstone defense. I'm thrilled to have you here and to tell you about something I'm really passionate about. The title of my capstone is A Solution Assessment, Research, Preparation, and Analysis of the Design for Implementing Sociocracy in a Nonprofit. And so sociocracy is a big part of this project. Sociocracy was introduced to me by Cheryl Connor, who is the professor for Finance 3 Corporate Forms. And she included the book We the People in our class curriculum. And here's a copy of the book if anyone would like to see it. The authors of the book are John Buck and Sharon Valines, and they were writing about this methodology developed by Gerard Endenburg. Gerard is a systems engineer living in the Netherlands. And my project sponsor is Global Awareness Local Action, whose founding executive director is Josh Arnold. The founding vision for our gala is to cultivate a dynamic and expanding network of people and organizations working together to build sustainable communities. Sustainable being a key word here. So traditional governance models are not sustainable. And what I'm going to be doing is talking about the solution to that, which is creating living organizations using dynamic governance or sociocracy. The second law of thermodynamics says, in effect, that concentrated energy disperses when the system's a closed system. And it becomes less concentrated as energy is less available to do the work, to do useful work. And we're going to be talking about doing work. We're going to be talking about power as the scientific definition of power to do work. So traditional governance models are linear. They include the board of trustees, governing body that provides policy which is executed where tactics are created by the executive director, and then those tactics are implemented by the program manager and the staff or non-board volunteers. And these have a lot of limits. It's a very linear system, and information is only flowing in one direction. And that creates reinforcing feedback loops. So the executive director is making decisions necessarily in a vacuum, because what's happening is the policy is developed, he's creating the tactics, and then the staff is being asked to implement it with no input from them on what may be happening and what may affect that. So the executive director makes the decisions, and the reinforcing feedback loop is the staff doesn't get to bring input, so they may not be fulfilling the tactics in the correct way. They're then feeding incorrect or not quite full information back to the executive director, and so that just keeps happening. The negative decisions just keep being made, and they get caught in that reinforcing feedback loops. And that also increases delays in the system, because if you had the correct information, the input from the lower members of the staff hierarchically, then you would be able to make decisions faster. So this is an autocratic system, meaning that there's a small group of individuals who are making decisions for a large group of people, and that is not sustainable. So the four elements of dynamic governance are consent, circles, elections, and double links. And consent is the bedrock of dynamic governance or sociocracy. And what it does is it depends on paramount objections. It depends on the members of the circle being able to object when they're not functioning properly. So if we were in a group and I was not able to work under certain conditions, then I would say I have an objection with that. And we would then work through together to create a proposal that would allow me to consent to whatever procedure or proposal we're operating with. And a perfect example, a very simple example of this is a heating system. If all the parts of the system are not working correctly, they're not functioning, then the whole system can't function. So if there's a problem, there's a paramount objection by one aspect of the heating system and the whole system won't work. So the second of the 4 elements is the elections, and the elections are a very important part of the process because what it does is it rewires the power system. So it helps to create leadership in areas of the organization that wouldn't normally allow leadership to manifest. The first of the 4 leaders who are in each circle is the operational officer. And the operational officer is the person who actually delegates the work operationally. But the operational officer is not elected within its circle. He's elected, or he or she is elected by the next higher circle to run the day-to-day work. And then there's the facilitator. Now, in many, in traditional governance models, the facilitator is the operational officer. But in dynamic governance, the facilitator is elected by the circle, and the facilitator is the one who runs the meetings. Now, what's great about this is this can be someone who would not ordinarily be chosen as the leader of the group. It could be somebody who's very quiet and doesn't have a big personality, but they may be very good at listening and at pulling out the really important parts of something. And what can happen is, as the election is proceeding, each person nominates somebody in the group to be the facilitator. So let's say I want to elect Jane because I think Jane communicates very well, she listens, and she can pick out the important parts. And so I elect Jane. I fill out my name and her name, and I pass my nomination to the operational officer, who in the first meeting of the circle will act as a facilitator. The operational officer will then take the nomination and he will read aloud whom nominated who. And so he'll say, Kimbria, why did you want to nominate Jane? And I'll say, because she listens very well, because she's able to pull out important pieces, and I think that she would do a great job as facilitator. Someone else may nominate somebody who's a big personality. But once they've heard my recommendation and they understand, you know, you're right, Jane does listen well, she is good at pulling out important pieces, I'm going to change my nomination to Jane. And so you can work through discussion in the group to someone who ordinarily would not step up as a leader. Now Jane is sitting there hearing all of these wonderful things that people think about them. She may know that she's a good listener. She tries very hard to be a good listener, but she doesn't know that everyone else in the group thinks she's a good listener. But when we all write down these nominations and we nominate her, then this is very positive feedback for her, which helps her to feel confident in developing her leadership skills. So the next person is the secretary, and the secretary is very important because they are the circle memory. They're the person who maintains the logbook and is responsible for keeping track of all the decisions made in the group, and so that there's a memory that can be translated to the next higher circles. And then there's finally the elected representative. Now the elected representative is a very important part of the double linking process in sociocracy. So the elected representative, again, the nomination proceeds the same way the secretarial nomination proceeds. Each person in the circle nominates somebody in the group to act as the elected representative. And that's someone that we think can carry the message to the next higher circle hierarchically. So let's say there's someone who's really great at communicating. They would be the one that I would nominate for this. Eventually, everyone has the opportunity to consent to this, meaning that they can live with this person representing us. And they are the person who's going to follow the double link to the next higher group. Now, the selection process is the same as the election process, but the selection process is used for proposals for work. So let's say that Ralph, or in Gala, there's a farm stand unit, okay? Josh is currently operating the farm stand. He says, I want to expand the hours for the farm stand, so I want to increase 2 hours a week. Everyone else says, well, that's going to take 2 hours out of my time. I'm not sure I want to do that, and there's a conversation that happens. And when the farm stand group comes to a decision about this, then they can say, I can live with that, I'm going to stay one day, someone else will close up another day. So we're happy with that. So the selection process works for the proposals in that way, and the proposals can be accepted because everyone consents. So then I've been talking about something called circles, and the circles are the group. I know it looks like a triangle here because that's the way Gerard Hindenburg created the model, but the circles is taken from the Dutch word for, and Ralph, you might know this, but it's krinka or something for circles, and I can't pronounce it. But the way that the circles work is that each member of the circle has an opportunity to lead, to do the work, and to measure the work. It's the responsibility of the entire group to do this. So if I have a proposal for the farm stand that I want to bring to Gala, then I'm doing the leading. And if someone else can come up with a proposal, either for developing the group as a whole, we find out about a training opportunity or something like that, then they can bring that to the group. Or if there's any way that leadership can manifest by anyone in the group, they have the opportunity to do that. So that's one way in which sociocracy or dynamic governance creates chaos. Where before, there would be one person who pretty much comes up with the ideas or says yay or nay by themselves in an isolated function, autocratic function. They're the ones who would say, oh, that's a great idea, and this is the traditional model. That's a great idea, but I'm not really interested in that for whatever personal reasons. Ego can get in the way, making me look good. There's a whole bunch of reasons why traditionally this won't work. But in this new model, anyone can be a leader, and if it's a good idea and everyone consents to that idea, then that chaos generates creativity and innovation. It's a really powerful tool. So in the circle, you lead, you do the work, and you measure the work, and it's everyone's responsibility to be involved in this. So the group is semi-autonomous. They create policy by consent. The group guides its own development. As I said, if there's training that we need to be more effective at doing our work, then we're the ones who say we need to go to this training, and we can set that policy ourselves. And we delegate with control, which means that we can delegate the work, but someone can't go off on their own and just complete the work and say, I've done the work. They have to come back and report about what they've done and how it worked out. So Daniel Goleman, in his book Primal Leadership, Learning to Lead with Emotional Intelligence, says that a process that continually builds leadership that gets results is very important. And that's what sociocracy is. This process will include helping your organization's leaders uncover their own strengths and their gaps and use their daily work as a laboratory for learning, which is exactly what sociocracy does. And then John Nuremberg, who wrote the book The Living Organization, Transforming Teams into Workplace Communities, says, allowing those that do the work to play in the work means empowering each member to participate meaningfully in the creation and maintenance of an effective organization. So the final element is double linking. Double linking is extremely powerful because what's going to be happening at Gala once this is implemented is that it's going to generate leadership from everywhere within the organization. So let's say that the food and agriculture group has the farm stand group in there. So they're going to be able to create the ideas, generating chaos, creativity, and innovation. They're going to be able to bring that information up through the elected leader, the elected representative, to this higher group. Excuse me. And then this group will review the proposal or the decision, and their elected representative will then bring it up to the executive director. Then Josh, who's the executive director, will then bring it up to the board of directors or one of the other committees if they need to be involved. Now, an extremely powerful part of sociocracy is the board of advisors who have in their group people who are totally external to the organization, have no investment, no purpose. Their sole responsibility is to come in and guide the group about finances or whatever kind of work they're doing. In Josh's case, it would be somebody who's maybe running another nonprofit. In the school's case, it might be somebody who's working at SIT who can come in and help us. And that's their sole role. So they're there to call us on everything. They're there to make sure that in Gala that our finances are in order, that we're operating including information that people in the organization may not be able to have. So that's extremely important. And the double links, again, the operational leader is going to be bringing down information hierarchically from the board and the executive director, but the elected representative is going to be the person that's bringing the information back up, all the ideas, all the creativity. So I wanted to talk about something else that's only in sociocracy, and that's that organizations can own themselves. And what happened was Gerard Endenberg felt very uncomfortable that he could make a decision about Endenberg Electronics when he was operating sociocratically. His lawyer was saying, you can just sell the company and do whatever you want. And he said, but I shouldn't be able to. This is a sociocratic model. Everyone should have a say in what happens with the company. So he went to his lawyer and he said, how can we make this happen? And the lawyer said, since you are a for-profit, you need to create two kinds of shares. You need a type A share and a type B share. I'm not going to go into this in great detail. You can ask me questions about it if you want to, because it's very complicated. But what happens is that type A share is owned by a foundation. So there's the Endenberg Electronics Foundation. And that foundation has board members who are the exact same board members who work for Endenberg Electronics. So what's happening is the nonprofit can then write in their bylaws that the foundation owns itself. But the for-profit has to create these two shares, and this share, which is one vote, is owned by the nonprofit. The B shares are then distributed through the stakeholders of the company, some of which, and this is another different part of sociocracy, some of which are investors. Investors do not hold more weight than the members of the organization. The workers and the staff and the presidents, the board members, they're equal to all of the other people in the organization, and they get the B shares. So when you have in the top circle voting about things that are happening in the organization, then it's sort of a collective mind of the people who own the shares can then vote, and the foundation is one of the organizations that do that. So as I said, it's fairly complicated. They spent a lot of time developing this model, but what it ends up as is Endenberg Electronics is owned by its own organization. Endenberg Electronics owns it, and you cannot, and even though Gerard is the founding member and owns most of the company, he cannot just go in and say, I'm going to move the company. Now, if they wanted to sell more of those shares to other people, and then those people could gain control, they can go back out of sociocracy, but they would have to dissolve the foundation, and they would have to sell more shares so that other people could gain more control. And I don't think that's going to happen. So in the nonprofit, such as Gala, it's very easy. You just write in the bylaws that Gala owns itself. Now, let's see. Here we go. So the other great part about this is that the environment is completely represented. So in your board, you have in the top circle, you have lots of different people represented. You have the chair, you have the vice chair, you have the audit manager, audit director. There's a lot of people who are involved. But in sociocracy, the environment also has a chair. So what happens is someone is elected only to represent the environment. And that person, through consent, helps maintain control of the organization. So at Gala, one person at any top circle would be asked, along with the other members of the circle, we're going to start using chemicals in our garden. Other people may say yes. The environment can say, I do not consent, and so it cannot proceed until the environment's paramount objection is cleared up. So this is extremely powerful, and this can be used, and it is being used in organizations all over the world. So we're going to look at other case studies. And sociocracy and dynamic governance is being used in co-housing organizations, nonprofits, all over the US. Two examples are the Echo Village in Loudoun County, Virginia, and Katiewill, which is in Coleraine, Massachusetts. And in Echo Village, when they were already an operating co-housing unit, and they were losing money, they had a lot of disagreements within the organization. It was really a negative situation, so they brought John Buck in, who's the first certified consultant for dynamic governance in the US. They brought him in to talk to them about what dynamic governance could do for them. And through consent, they were able to design organizational documents, rewrite the bylaws, and come to agreements with that. And one thing that they loved about this is that any meetings that they were having went a lot more quickly, because people got used to the fact that they were going to be asked for consent, and they would already go in there knowing what they could live with. And so something would be proposed, and they would say, nope, can't do that, paramount objection, or they would say, consent, 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 and everybody would go around. Good, next decision. So it really sped up the decision-making process. The other thing they really liked about it was, not at first, but once John Buck talked them into having outside members or external partners in the community come in on the advisory board, then they were having financial problems. They didn't have anybody in the co-housing group that was able to figure out the books and things like that. They had people come in and say, well, you're legally supposed to report this at this certain time as a nonprofit, or you're legally supposed to be doing that. And so they were in the red when John Buck came to them, and now they're running very cost effectively, and they're in the black, and it's a much happier group. Now, Katiewill is using this sociocracy as an interview process, because they adopted it very early on in the development. The owner of the property now has 3 other people. One person's already gone through the process and has been accepted, and 2 others are looking to buy houses in the co-housing unit, in the co-housing property. And what they're doing is they're using this as the interview process, because they want to make sure that the members of the co-housing group self-select, that there are people who want power with, not power over, that they're willing to listen to other people's considerations, and they want to get the work done. They want to have people who are accountable. So what they're doing is they've required people to read 2 books on community, but they're also asking them to go through an introductory training course on sociocracy. And this has been very successful. They're also using it in their meetings, and they did have one person on the group who was a CEO, and he was very uncomfortable with the consent process. And what happened was, through living with it and working with it, he just one day he saw the light and he said, oh my gosh, we're doing things so much faster. This is so much smoother. I love this. So now he's not upsetting the apple cart anymore. He's learned to do power with instead of power over, which is really exciting. Now, NextGen is the next generation of eco villages. And this is a group in Findhorn, Scotland, that is training global communities, which they consider to be the next generation of eco villages. They're doing farming and lots of other things, education, and they're training groups, and they would like to partner with Gala so that they will offer training. They will offer a grant to Gala so that they can be trained in sociocracy. They're very interested in what we're doing there. And they're making sociocracy their governance model, and they're so invested in it that they're giving these grants to the new global, the new eco villages to promote their education in sociocracy. And then there's the creme de la creme, which is living well, assisted living home in Bristol, Vermont, which has been doing this for 5 years. And the director of Living Well actually spoke with a class during the finance class, and they're just an amazing group. Paul and Winsong gathered together a community of investors and began training their group in sociocracy 5 years ago, and they've been given the State of Vermont 2008 Governance Excellence Award for their drumming program that they've introduced to the elder people. But that's outside the sociocracy. But the elder group, the elders who are staying there, do have their own circle, and they make their own decisions on menu. It's just amazing. It's working for every section of the assisted living home. When I spoke with Paul, he said the first thing I need to do with Gala is to create the election of officers, which is the first practice of consent. And so that's going to be the first thing we do, and it's probably going to be with the farm stand group. So there are also colleges and universities all over the world who are using this, and it would be great if we could start to use this at Marlboro. I don't know if you recognize any of these international schools, Ralph, but they're all over the world, and particularly we have the 30-school public school system in Shed, Netherlands, which is doing it with high school and elementary school kids. I'm working with the people at Yukon College to set up a conference in June of 2010. But it's a really great model for learning institutions. And of course, there are some disadvantages to everything. The disadvantages with sociocracy are mainly at the implementation phase. It's getting people trained. It's their understanding that they really do have a voice, that this isn't just the next trick that the boss is bringing in. So at first, some people are uncomfortable, but once they've gotten to understand that they can really trust the process, then it seems to work extremely well, and there's a greater employee retention. Sick incidences of employee sick time are reduced. There's less burnout. There's the work gets done better because the members of the circles really are excited about the work. They're excited that they have a voice in the work, that they can develop their ability to do the work themselves, and so there's one particular thing I wanted to talk about, and that's the ability to adapt to change, which is really important because the groups in the circle have knowledge about what's going on. They're able to adapt to emergencies, crises, change themselves. If there's an emergency in the farm stand, they don't have to say, find Josh. They can say, oh, I know how to fix that. The egg guy didn't show up. I know what to do about this, because they've got all of the information that Josh has. It really speeds the adaptation to change. So I wanted to say that this presentation is dedicated to the two Cintras, my twin sister and my mother, because of their support for this during the program. And I wanted to invite you all to the first General Conference on Sociocracy, which is happening June 14 to 16 at the Yukon University in the Yukon. So love to have you all there. So does anyone have any questions?